All right, so for students, for math students who are on track to business field or econ, this video lesson of mine is going to introduce an application, a way how we can apply derivatives into a very common work, into a very common concepts that either you have seen already or in the future you will do this kind of work very oftenly right here. So the concept I'm talking about, very popular, very common among the business professionals and economic experts here. It's marginal analysis. Okay, so for anyone studying about business and econ, then we always have to emphasize on these three fundamental quantities right here. So when you're leading your own business, there's always one fundamental quantity referred to as cost. And so now strictly looking at cost in a mathematical understanding, then it's a quantity. So we can usually assign a constant, a function. So throughout many textbooks, we set ourselves into a tradition that we're using a capital letter C to represent the cost function. Because the idea now is that cost should always comes first, because we make the product. For whatever business, we start out by having the product. So cost here is how much we spend out for our business for making the product. That's what cost is. And usually, I'm not saying always, but usually cost is in terms of so the main variable x here is the number of items. The number of items, the number of products that you are producing to run your business. So after cost, there's the x right here in my current example that I'm pointing out is intended for the number of items, but it's not always. There could be also price. Now I believe anyone viewing this video must have come from some finite math course before the calculus here, the finite math course for business major in specifically. Then your cost is not only dependent on quantity. So in many other cases, cost can also be dependent on price. How much what's the pricing that you decide can also affect the cost right here. But now, after cost, then we're looking for selling our product away. And so that's why there is revenue. Okay, and I'm sure as I'm going over these three fundamental concepts right here, anyone viewing this video at this point is not feeling surprised at all about any of these three concepts any one of these three fundamental quantities that I'm bringing up right here. So revenue is selling away, and how much you earn by simply selling away all of these products that you've made. So you spend your own expenses, that's called cost, to make the products, and then we're selling it away. And so revenue here is usually, now I shouldn't even say usually, fundamentally the price multiplied with the quantity that you're selling away. Okay, price times quantity. And so many textbooks for business math traditionally use the capital letter R over here as a function for revenue. And so an x here again, usually is understood. The main variable of the function here is the number of items. But so now I'm going to go back, and so x here in my definition of cost right here, then x is the number of items being produced. That's to be precise. And so now x here is the number of items again, but being sold, or that you're aiming at selling away. Okay, so that's cost, that's revenue, and these are the common. And these are not the only way of naming your function. At this point, anyone viewing a video and you're at a calculus level, you should be even more flexible in terms of naming your own function. But here it's just the most common way how many textbooks, including me right here, when I'm assigning the assignments to my math students in business, then I tend to also use these terms because it's quite directly related to these primary names here, cost and revenue. Okay, and one more important quantity that any business professional have to be aware of, and this is our ultimate final purpose right here, profits. Okay, and profits here is always the revenue, the total earning by selling your product away, revenue, minus the cost, because revenue here is not quite your final profits yet. Final profit is how much you earn for your own life, for your how much you own and going into your own pockets. Okay, so profits really is the revenue, how much you earn by just simply selling the products away, and subtract out the costs, subtract the expenses that you spent for making your products. And so that's how it is. And again, commonly many textbooks, including me right here, I set into the habit of using a capital P letter right here to represent the profits. So now profits here can have a mathematical relationship. It's revenue as a function of x minus the cost function. And again, x here is the number of items that are sold. Okay, so these are three fundamental quantities that any business professional have to be aware of. And so now back to what I was introducing. Now our main goal here is to understand about marginal analysis. And so the concept of analyzing marginal is also is as well not new to anyone viewing this video at this point, because I believe that anyone at this point, when you are taking calculus, the calculus that are applied to business track students, then before entering this course, you must have learned must have taken some course of in econ or in your own business field right there. So these terms, the marginal cost and marginal revenue and marginal profits, are not a surprise to you. Okay, and so my point of saying now is that so the cost, after I just explain what that is, we can apply math right here. We can use our math skill to find out what marginal cost is. Okay, and then the same for revenue. So I just now briefly explained what revenue is. So with our calculus understanding, we can apply our calculus understanding to find effectively the marginal cost, the marginal revenue for our business. And the same with profits. We can also use our math skill at this point to find marginal profits. Okay, and so marginal is a concept. Marginal is a concept where we can apply to any of the three fundamental quantities that I was introducing earlier. So for cost, we can also find marginal cost. So now I have to underline the term marginal with a red ink marker over here. And for revenue, we can find marginal revenue. And again, just there, I was writing it earlier. For profit, we can also find marginal profit. Okay, and so now I will bring up an example in this video lecture here with surprisingly, maybe it's just me, but I am going to bring up in our first example a problem that shows how to find marginal revenue. Okay, And so let's now look at a problem I have on the board right here, on the computer screen here. So Mike's Parts Incorporated has a motor whose total revenue is R of X equals 31X minus 0.04X squared, where X is the number of motors sold. So the meaning of the X variable in our revenue function is exactly like how I brought it up earlier. So question A is quite simple. Let's get it done quickly. So question A truly is nothing but just to find how much revenue. So I'm not talking, and we're nowhere into the marginal yet. So R of 90 is just simply, once we knew our function, our revenue function, then R of 90 just means we want to find, this just means, okay, basically how much revenue is made. How much revenue made when 90 units, 90 motors, the company that we saw in our problem was selling some kind of motors. So when 90 units were sold, okay? And so again, let me remind the function that I showed on this computer screen earlier. R of X here, the revenue as a function dependent on the quantity being sold 31X minus 0.04X squared. All right, so that's our revenue function, our general revenue function. And again, I will bring up in another problem introducing how we can, but that should be limited because normally this, if anyone having a question for me that how did this function come out? I mean, who came up with this function? Think about it this way. Usually when you open your own business, ideally if you have your own time and efforts, you can do some analysis to come up with your own revenue function. But usually this can be done by a hired professional. What I mean is, when you run your own business, usually you hire an analyst who, observe the market for you in terms of your own products that you are making, and then the analyst there will come up with the revenue function for you. What's important for you as the owner of the business is that you're going to need to understand what your function here can do for you. Okay, and so that's what the intention of this example is all about. So in this example, we don't need to worry about where this function came from. Think about somebody already did the analysis and came up with that revenue function for us. And let's now use that as from our side here. We are the owner of the business. We're going to look at our revenue function here. Supposedly we already had it, and see what we can do with that revenue function. And so now, particularly for question A here, R90 is the revenue the revenue made when 90 units were sold. That is just simply 31 multiplied with 90 because we're substituting 90. It's just the standard algebra, nothing calculus here yet. And so minus 0.04 times 90 in parentheses squared. Okay, and it's never a bad idea to always throw your substituted value in parentheses so that we can carry out order of operations carefully. Now I'm talking strictly in terms of some mathematical safety right here. Okay, and so I am going to swing back to my computer quickly for a calculation. All right, so my final calculation came out R of 90. Our revenue made when 90 units were sold is 2,466, and these are in dollars, in just basic dollars. And so I'm not saying that. I mean, if someone is having a good sense about money, you can see that this is not a high price. These are not the kind of high price the motor, but because 90 units, but only giving us a revenue, selling 90 units away, but only giving us a revenue of $2,466. It's not too much, but just stay with what it is here in our current problem. Okay, so that's the answer quickly for this problem. Okay, not much to doubt about it. That's the entire intention of this problem, and it does reveal your skill again from your previous course, your finite math for business, supposedly learned before our calculus entry here. Okay, and so that's how we found the answer to question A. Now I am going to swing back to the computer screen again, and now let's look at part B. And so same function, same exact problem like that. So now part B is asking, and of course we're still looking at the revenue function here being 31x minus 0.04x squared. We want to find R prime of x. So now back on my board again. So having R already written down on the board here and previously defined, right? Then the question in part B here is simply a math problem. And so I'm trying to take anyone into the problem here as step by step as we can, and here I'm just bringing out all the skills we have learned at this point. So question A was a very basic algebra skill. We're substituting a value into a function where we already had a function previously defined. Question B right here is simply asking us to utilize your ability to find derivative. So, and the question was stating, clearly in the question itself, find R prime of x. That is famously the symbol for derivative. So now finding out the derivative of this R function is simply according to all the basic derivative rules and combined together with power rules. Then we can go 31 minus 0.08x. So that is our derivative function. Nothing fancy about this question, and that is all the intention of this question here. We find the derivative of our previously defined function, revenue function. And so here it is, that's the derivative. We are done with part B. And so you can see that I spent a little bit of time to explain part A, but it's supposedly, if anyone is doing this on your own, it's supposedly to go extremely fast, a lot faster than my pace here on the board. And you just now see that in the way how we approach part B as well, it's supposed to be a lot faster than that as well, because it's just a simple derivative problem. But now we are in, let's get ourselves to question C right here. Another easy one. The same problem. Let's find R prime at 90. So R prime at 90. I have spent some time explain when we were still learning just the fundamental of derivative. The whole idea of being able to find a general derivative function as the one we're having here is so that when we are now asked, for example, in question C right here, now we are asked to find R prime at 90. That means now we just simply know, according to this, the symbolic expression right here, we're just simply gonna substitute 90 into our previously found derivative function as a function dependent on x. And so there we go, another question that's easy for us to find an answer for. 31 minus 0.08 times 90. That's as simple as it can be. Nothing more complicated than that. I am going to quickly step away for a quick calculation on my calculator, and I'll be right back. All right, so now my calculation came out being 23.8, and I'm pretty sure anyone who have seen my another video lesson of mine where I showed direct examples, we can understand this quantity here, this outcome here, as the instantaneous rate of change of revenue function. This is revenue function. Derivative is the instantaneous rate of change of revenue when we are selling, particularly at the instant that we're selling particularly 90 units away. I mean, that company, Mike's Parts Company Incorporated, So this means when we are selling precisely 90 units, then we are making instantaneously as a rate, we are making 23.8 is a positive quantity, $23.80 per unit. Okay, so we're gaining revenue by that rate right here. So that's just some interpretation that that I have already introduced, but that's really not my aim here to review this kind of interpretation. We want to take this kind of interpretation to the next step. All I just want to point out is right now that's all we understand about this quantity right here. The 23.8 means revenue, right, is increasing because positive. So revenue is increasing at $23.8 or $23.80 in real money term like that per unit, okay, per motor that we're selling. Okay, so now once again, and of course I want to be as step by step as possible, so I ask for your patience to follow along every step in this particular problem right here, and it will bring all the little pieces together. So right now we're just building up all the solid pieces like that. So now on my board, again my computer screen, let's look at question D. All right, so now question D is another straight old calculation problem. All right, so question D was just simply asking us to find OR 90 minus OR 91 minus OR 90. It's asking us to do a very simple math. And so far, anyone viewing this video has been probably starting to wonder why is Mr. Doong taking you throughout all these very simple steps? What's worth your time about this? Okay, we will find out. So another straight simple calculation. Allow me to quickly step away for the calculation, and I'll be right back. All right, so my calculation came out to be $23.76. Okay, $23.76. Mathematically speaking, this is a simple problem, a very simple question. It doesn't even need any calculus. The only two calculus problems problem that we're seeing are question C and B. Those are about it. Okay, nothing calculus about the question D that we just did. We can just anyone with an algebra skill and just got out of algebra can just simply get that work done right there, and you can have your calculators handling the job for you. Okay, so that's this strictly as a computational value. It's done quite simple. Okay, but so now let's have a good sense about let's look at this answer right here. And so that's what I intend to go. So the next question in the problem, I want anyone viewing the video to investigate a little more closely into the answer we have just obtained in question D. Okay, so now I'm going to bring the board back. So question D here, what we had here was a difference. What we did there was finding a difference. The difference, and notice, see, so now it's starting to make sense right here. It's starting to put the pieces together. This was whatever the answer comes out here was the answer from part A. So part A was sort of like a stepping stone step right here, so that to get this answer ready for you. And then all you do is just calculate the revenue at selling 91 units. So this is a little bit new right here. Revenue when you're selling 91 units, subtract the revenue of selling 90 units. Okay, and that's how much difference. So right now, one way to understand is this $23.76 is the difference. Okay, the difference in revenue. The difference in revenue between between selling 91 units and 90 units. That's simplest way of seeing that. It's just the difference, okay, in revenue, the difference in revenue between selling 91 units and selling 90 units, okay? But now let's try to understand even more on top of that, because this is too easy for us, too simple. It's not clicking much for specifically students who are on track to business field right here. So let me now bring up a different way to understand. Yes, it's a difference in revenue between selling 91 units and 90 units, but observe, it's only 1 unit away from each other. So here we're looking at 90, and that was the answer we had from part A, right? The revenue we made for selling 90 units was 2,466 something, that if I still remember correctly. But now think about 91 here means the role of 91 related with 90 here means 91 is the 1 more additional units after 90. The 91 here is 1 more additional units after selling 90 units away. So think about right at the instance that you're selling 90 units away, then 91 here, selling 91 units brings you a difference 23.76. So this change here, another way of interpreting this. So 23.26 is the revenue is the revenue made by selling 1 additional units, okay, after 90. And I'm saying after 90 because right now the situation is kind of like we're focusing at selling 90 units away, and then we want to ask at that instance how much revenue would we bring in by selling 1 additional units away. And that's what I mean by this 23.76 or $23.76 is the revenue made by selling 1 additional unit after selling 90 units away. Okay? But now, when you're looking at this description a little more closely, does that start bringing up some familiar concepts right here? All right, so now let me swing to my other board. I will spend some time erasing this board right here. So right now we are currently looking at revenue. And I, at the beginning of this video lesson, introduced about our aim here is to study about revenue. I mean, it's a marginal analysis. That's what I mean right here. And so, but specifically in this first example I brought up, it's about a marginal revenue. So what exactly is, let's now have a formal definition. And by the way, I am not an econ expert. I'm not a business expert right here. So I leave all the big good details for the econ professors and business professors to show you. And I'm pretty sure any viewer at this point viewing my video here has already been familiar with these concepts. But it's good to remind your understanding so that we can see how math is driven into this kind of concept. So now specifically we're looking at revenue. So marginal revenue. Okay, marginal revenue in the simplest way of understanding, it's the revenue. Okay. Of selling one, underline that for me, okay? Selling 1 additional. Okay, the marginal revenue is the revenue of selling 1 additional units, okay, of the product, of course. That's what it is. So straight out from this definition, this formal definition of what marginal revenue is, then what do we realize about the answer in question D that we have answered? And now I use, so this now when you're looking at closely, and as I hope I triggered up your understanding earlier, see when you're consider yourself being at the instance where you sold away 90 units, then 91 here, R of 91, the difference between R of 91 and R of 90 is the revenue that you made by selling one additional units after 90. Okay, so I trigger that understanding of yours. So now connecting with the definition I just made earlier, then this another way of understanding. This is the precise. This is now the best understanding of this. The most formal understanding now is that this amount right here, or maybe it's even better that I completely erase this line, because that's just some beating around the bush explanation. But now the real truth here, this is, and I have to say, this is exactly, okay, the marginal, this quantity, $23.76 right here is the marginal revenue. Okay, it's the marginal revenue at another way of saying the marginal revenue by selling the 91st units. So when you say and look at my wording right here, it's the marginal revenue made by, I should have added that word made by, okay, made by selling the 91st revenue. So 91st revenue means we reference it back to the 90th. So at the instance of being, at the instance that we made revenue for selling 90 units away, then selling the 91st units would bring an additional 23.76 revenue into your total revenue by far. Okay, and that's what it means by, and this is called, I mean, this is really reflecting the exact amount of your marginal revenue, but only at that instance, when you are selling away 90 units. Okay, and so, and let me open a parentheses here, and of course at at 90 units, it's the additional amount made by selling the 91st units, sort of like as an additional one after 90 units right there, and that's why I'm saying at 90 units. So for short, a lot of time, many professors would say this is the marginal revenue made by, the marginal revenue at 90 units. That's surprisingly, it can be short that way. It's a way to communicate. Okay, and so now let's look at, so here back on my computer screen right here. So that's how we understand. That's what we understand about question E. That's how we understand, because question E, part E of our example is just simply asking the meaning of the answer in D. We already had that answer. So moving over to question F right here of our current example. Okay, and so what can the answer in C? Okay, what can the answer in C say about the revenue of the sale of the 91st unit? Okay, so let's look back at what we found for the answer in part C right here. The answer in part C, the answer in part C was R prime at 90. Okay, and feel free to pause the video or even rewind back to that point where I was doing R prime of 90. But here I can also quickly remind anyone, R prime at 90 was 23.8. 23.8. And then back at the end of question C, where I was only beating around the bush by explaining, hey, this was the instantaneous rate of change, meaning instantaneously revenue was increasing at $23.80 per unit at that instance. Okay, that's why I said instantaneously. So that's what was one way how I interpreted that answer earlier. But now there's a whole brand new intention here. look at how close 23.8, $23.80 compare with the $23.76. Okay? And notice how close they are. It's only like what, 4 cents away. 23.8 that we found by the derivative work right there. And now 23.76. And just now, just earlier, I called this amount $23.76 is exactly the marginal revenue. It's the marginal revenue that's made by selling the 91st units. It's the exact. So here's the situation. And I already start bringing up how close the two answers are. And that's the way it is. That's the way it is. Okay? So now, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you. Ideally speaking, if any time that you are asked to find the marginal revenue, this is getting you the precise way. So people ask you, anyone is asking you, or you want to know for yourself, if your function, if the revenue of your business is going this way, you know, with the function 31x minus 0.04x squared, and you're asking yourself, what is the marginal revenue of selling the 81st units, for example? Okay, what exactly and intentionally you're asking for the exact amount, then marginal revenue of selling the 81st units would be done by doing this. Or 81, okay, minus or 80, because you're treating 81 as one additional units away from 80. So that's why we take that difference. But see, so ideally this will give us the exact amount, but we are businessmen. Pretend, as you view this video, you pretend yourself that you're a businessman. We don't always have that valuable time to carry out so much math. I mean, I already had a lot of computer set up so that I can do the math quickly, but think about we're on our work out there. We don't want to get some math problem got hung up on us, right? Because it takes a lot of steps. We don't have that valuable time. We'd rather spend our time making money out there. Okay? And so this is the ideal situation to get us the exact answer, but that's not what exactly we need, because it takes too much time. So we can always now have a better way. I'm not expecting the exact answer, but at least I can always have a good approximate. And that's what this value is. So now, this value now, a different way of seeing that, this is the truly as it is. It's not exactly $23.76, but it's the approximate. Okay, it's the approximate. And now it becomes a strategy, because you can see, taking the derivative, back in question B, how much time did it spend for you? And especially with your function, I erased it here, but 31x minus 0.04x squared, how easy is that to find the derivative and substitute it in? At least you only have to do one calculation, if you have to. Okay? But so this answer here, now I can say to anyone, it's the approximate, right? The approximate of marginal revenue. Okay? Marginal revenue at 90 units. Okay? And what does that mean? It's the approximate marginal revenue, okay, made by selling the 91st unit. And that's now answer exactly what it's asking for in question, in the actual question on the board, right there on the computer screen that I brought up earlier. What can the answer in C say about the revenue of the sale of the 91st unit? Okay, and so now let me get back on the board here and explain and try to explain a little further. And so now, as I have pointed out earlier, ideally speaking, if we would like to find the exact, if anyone really that's picky about getting the exact amount, then this is the work. So think about the consequence here. If you want to, and a lot of times, business work is the kind of work that's it's changing quickly. And your functions that you're observing, it's growing up and down all over. So, like I said, unless you are so much a perfectionist that you're looking for exact answers anytime, then you have to go through this work every single time to get the exact marginal revenue at any instance of your product, at any instance of your product sale. Okay, but if just to have a good picture enough, if to have a good imagination enough, a good picture enough, a good idea enough about how much marginal revenue you are making at an instance, then it's better. It's better, faster, a lot more efficient by doing this approximate. So what's the plan there? Get the derivative and substitute in the value, the instance value right there, the instance where we are selling 90 units. Substitute that into the derivative function. And that output value right here is, it's not the exact, but it's always close enough. Always, trust me, I guarantee this, it's always close enough that give you a picture of it, and it's an approximate of the marginal revenue at 90 units, or another way of saying the approximates of marginal revenue made by selling the 91st unit right there. And so because people have found this fabulous way of approximating marginal revenue, it's only surprisingly, and originally it was only an approximate, but it's been effective enough to the point that in these days, really in the world of business professionals out there, not too many people, not too many of them are still staying with this precise one, because see, it's taking time for them, and they don't have that valuable time. If I was a businessman myself, I wouldn't want to spend my time for doing too much math like this either. Okay, so we want to get on the kind of work that's close enough, giving us answer close enough, and it works quickly and fast anytime, anywhere, so that we can get what we want, the marginal revenue. And so in that way, over time, this method, find the derivative and plugging in the value to get the approximates has become official, has officially become the way to find a marginal revenue in this specific example. We are here in this example looking at the revenue. So finding the derivative of the revenue function and then substituting the value indicating the instance that we're selling whatever, etc. units, and then get that outcome right there. That final answer is originally the approximate, but now we legally use that. We formally use that as the marginal revenue. Okay, and so a lot of time now, even throughout all the instructors, including me, and among all business professionals, now when we are communicating with all the business professionals, and when they mention find a marginal revenue, they are not expecting you to go through the other long work to get the exact. They are not doing that. They officially allow you to do this. Anytime the word find marginal revenue comes through your ear, okay, then you just go ahead and find the derivative of your current function, and then substitute in the value, and that gives you the marginal revenue. Supposedly only an approximate, but trust me, close enough. A marginal revenue of the next, after selling the additional one more units right there. Okay, and so that's the whole idea about this example. So now, after this example, what else can we do with this? And so you can see now that the skill of being able to find derivative is extremely essential. It's extremely essential in your work right there. So now I am going to clear out my board. And let's summarize what we have done throughout, and what conclusion we have drawn throughout this example right here. And so, revenue, okay. And we now just learned specifically throughout this example how to find marginal revenue. So for revenue, now we can find marginal revenue. Revenue itself is the function R of X. Then, so officially now R prime is now regarded as called the, see, without any given X value, then marginal revenue It's just the derivative. Now we officially take that idea. It's the derivative. So R prime here is it's so-called the marginal revenue function. Okay, so now if you apply your skill in taking the derivative and where your function is a revenue function, then the derivative of your revenue function is called the marginal revenue function in respect to your revenue function, like that, and just like that. And so I've taught business math long enough to the point that I've seen quite a few textbooks out there. So yes, a good majority of textbooks just get straight into calling R prime. I mean, supposedly revenue is your function R of X. Then R prime, the prime of your revenue function is simply, many textbooks, as I said, is simply indicating marginal revenue function. But then just for any viewers to be aware, there are textbooks out there to also use a symbol like this, MR. Just MR, or maybe optionally with the variable. That's also a way to indicate. So this means R prime. Okay, this is some textbook. I'm just saying that some textbook is using the symbol MR with open parentheses, or even skipping the parentheses X right there. But that is also a way to indicate a marginal revenue function. And even some textbooks also use MR, and I don't understand what their reasoning is, but they put a bar on top of that. Okay, but that's also another symbols you might find out there throughout different textbooks for business math, and that's also, these are all means the same. It's marginal. It's one way to write marginal revenue function. That's another way, but this is the way that officially welcomed right here. So if anyone asking me for Mr. Doing individually, what do you prefer? I prefer my student to be flexible with all of these, because that's the whole point of learning. We learn as much as we can, and we know just all different ways of how people are using symbols. You can even come up with your own symbol as long as you understand what you're saying. Okay? And so that's some conclusion we have done, that we have drawn right out from this particular example we've done. But marginal, as I said earlier, marginal, the concept of finding marginal is not only done with revenue. Recall that I mentioned the three fundamental quantities in business. They are even before revenue, before making your revenue. You also have cost, and after you making your revenue, you have profits. Okay, so I am going to quickly step out to the other board. All right, so here we go. So just like that. Now when you're looking at costs, okay, when you're looking at a cost, and your cost function is of course C of X, then of course you can find the marginal on top of your cost function, and so it makes perfect sense to be able to find marginal cost. And so if cost itself is represented by the C of X function, C is for cost, then marginal cost is the C prime. Okay, the derivative. So we didn't see that in this example, but see, the idea is now we can see through one example and make a generalization to the rest of those. Okay, and they're all related enough. But now let me give a formal definition of what marginal cost is, because I did give the formal definition for marginal revenue. So marginal cost is the cost of producing, okay, one additional item. That's what it is, the cost of producing one additional item. Okay, and then outside of this formal example, this C prime right here, yes, as very similar to what I pointed out with marginal revenue, then this C prime is officially used in many textbooks, in a good majority of textbooks for business math. That this is the symbol to represent, we call this, okay, marginal, it's the marginal cost function. Okay, marginal cost function. But again, for my viewers, for my students to be aware of, then some textbook does use the symbol MC right here, or sometimes with a pair of parentheses here that stands for, see, MC, marginal cost. Okay, and even some textbooks use a symbol like this, MC, marginal cost, with a bar right here as a function, or without a function. Okay, so there are so many ways to use, but make sure you understand what you're saying. I mean, make sure you understand, and so I point out as many different ways as possible about different symbols to represent marginal cost function out there for my students to be aware when you're being exposed to different kind of problem assignments right there, and on your own field working with marginal analysis. Okay, and so now same way, what about profits? So profits, as I mentioned in the beginning of our video lesson here, then usually we use the function p of x. Capital P is for profit, and x here, you see, so at this point I have to mention a little more specifically, marginal here is when we're looking at marginal, we have to first set our function in terms of the units either being sold or being produced, okay? Because that's what they are. It's for the additional cost or the additional revenue by one more units, okay? And so now profit, we can also, so if profit is being defined as a P of X function, then yes, we can also find the marginal of the profits, okay? Or for short, I mean for all together, marginal profit, okay? Let me correct my writing a little bit. So marginal profits. So the three fundamental quantities that anyone doing business should always be aware of. And now on top of any of those three quantities, then we can always find the marginals on top of those. And so if profit itself, so without just profit itself, we're talking about the P of X, then now with marginal profits, then throughout, or as a conclusion that we can draw from the example I brought up, even though only for revenue, but now we can draw out a generalization that marginal profits now legally the P prime of X function. Okay, so let me also remind you the meaning, the formal definition of marginal profits. It's the profits, okay, of selling one additional item or unit. Okay, it's the profits of selling one additional unit or one additional item. And so P prime of X here just as a function, and at that level being a function before we substitute value in, then we refer this symbol right here is officially and widely used throughout a good majority of textbooks out there to represent marginal profits. Okay, marginal profits function. Okay, that's what it is. But then again, I have to also point out, I've seen enough that there are quite a few textbooks out there as well using the symbol MP, capital MP, or maybe even capital M with a lowercase p. Believe me, you gotta start being flexible with this. But so you gotta always, when you're doing a business, you always got to stay to completely focus on your own situation out there. So just one way to be aware, people can call that, it's an MP right here, it stands for marginal profits. Okay, having parentheses X or without parentheses X, that might also be another possibility. Okay, so that's another way of writing, the marginal, that's another way of indicating we're looking at the marginal profit function. or even some other textbooks use MP with a bar, and maybe or maybe not having the in parentheses X. So these are all different ways of how people are indicating the marginal profit function. Okay, and so that's what it is. So now let's step into another example. And then at this point, after we formally learn and officially allow a solid method to find, because example 1 was to introduce and trigger your understanding, and now once we formalize the idea, let's start applying that idea into another example here. And so, all right, so now here we are at our next example. So in this same lecture over here, Mike's Parts incorporate manufacturers. So this is, we talk about that line, that level where we're making the products before selling it away. Okay, so Mike's Parts incorporate manufacturers a certain motor whose total cost is, so we got a cost function right here. Okay, and X here represent the number of the motors that are produced. So now straight directly into the function, into question A itself, we want to find C prime of X. So in this concept that we've just learned, and in the intention of this particular problem, then I want to see this as I want to see C prime as the marginal cost. Okay, so this is one problem that I found throughout the web and throughout many business math textbooks right here. So that's one of the way of how people run the symbols of that. Okay, so let me now swing to my writing board and ready for actual work. So now this particular example, we are looking at cost. And so the MC with the bar there means we're now particularly looking for the marginal cost function. And so looking for the marginal cost function is the same as looking for the C prime of X. And your C prime was already found. Remind yourself. Okay, so let me add this line right here. So I just feel guilty that I don't write the actual function before we do any work on the board here. So plus 0.2 X squared. Okay. So now our C prime is as easy as 27 plus 0.4 X, as we simply apply the basic limit, the basic derivative rules for this, including the power rule. Okay, and so that's our C prime of X, and this is to be understood as the marginal cost function. Okay, so marginal cost function is 27 plus 0.4 X. So back to the wording of my question here, I particularly introduced the way how the question is being worded completely symbolic. Okay, so be aware of that. People might even give you a question that's completely in words. Say, instead of finding C prime or MC bar right there, people can just ask you find the marginal cost function. That can also be worded that way. All right. So now we are ready for part B of the example. So now here the wording is making it clear. Find the marginal cost at X equals 8. Okay, we are looking at the exact same function because we're in the same company. Okay, that manufactures the same kind of motor right there, and X has the same meaning. So here find the marginal cost at X equals 8. That now means, see, so as I said already, as I explained earlier, now a marginal is officially approved as the method that just simply, after we found the derivative, just simply substitute this value into the marginal cost function. And so now, what have we had here? Let me get back on my writing board here. So marginal cost we have found previously. So for question of part B here, okay, so everything we have done there is for part A. Okay, so marginal cost for, well, let me just spend some time writing it down right here. Marginal cost at X equals 8. That means, so see again, be careful when it says at X equals 8. Yes, mathematically we're substituting X equals 8 into our marginal cost function, C prime of x. And so that means we're looking at 27 plus 0.4 times h. Okay, and then so that means we're now looking at $30.2. Okay, so now we say by words, we say, you know, by words here, this is the marginal cost. This is the answer, the marginal cost at x equals 8 at selling 8 units. Okay, the marginal cost at selling 8 units. So when I'm saying at selling 8 units, but now be aware that, see, in question C of mine right here, what is the meaning of the answer in B? Okay, so that's why I want to, you know, make it as continuous as possible. But the meaning of the question, so this is asking for the meaning, the actual in-word meaning of the answer we have just now had. Then this answer $30.02, I mean $30.20 actually, 30.2. So let me clear out my other board here. So that's one way of saying that, but another, a better way that I always prefer telling my students that, so it just means the cost, okay? It means the cost to produce, because see, look at the term, and it's important to say at x equals 8. I have to underline that. So that means we want to look at x equals 8 as an instant. So right at that instant when you're selling 8 units, then the cost to produce the 9th one additional item, that's what it is. Okay, the cost to produce the 9th item is according to our calculation, approximately. I mean, technically it's just that, but we use that enough. But so here, since anyone is a beginner viewing this video, so I'm just going to stick with that truest meaning of it. Is approximately, okay, $30.20. That's what it is right there. Okay, so it's the cost to produce, and that's what marginal means. That's what marginal revenue means, but even though we're not worrying about the exact answer. All right, so now, since we're still, anyone viewing this video, again, as I've said maybe a couple times, but anyone viewing this video, I'm assuming that we're new to this, or we are a beginner into this. So, you know, let me for a couple more times bring up the real calculation, the real precise calculation. Okay, so now right here we are at our question D right here. Find C9 minus C8. So just like how I was explaining earlier, the answer in part B was only an approximate. Okay, the cost right there, the cost, that $30.20 right there was only the cost, I mean, it was approximately the cost to produce the 9th unit, the 9th item after the 8th one. Okay, but now let's really tear it down and compare how close we are. That's the idea right there. Okay, so back again to question D. We want to find we want to find the difference between C9, C at 9, and I mean, this is a typo over here, and C at 8. Okay, so supposedly it's a typo. I apologize for that, but C9 minus C8. Okay, and so now, again, back on my board right here. And we're still having the function C written here. All right, so C9 minus C8 is simply now laying down the math. Then it's just one group of brackets for 27 times 9 plus 0.2 times 9 squared that's C9. And then we need to subtract, okay, another group of parentheses is here, I mean brackets right here, and we're doing 27 times 8 plus 0.2 times 8 all squared. Okay, and so that's our C9 minus C8. But then again, allow me a minute or so to step away from my board here and do a calculation. So I'm going to step back to my computer station here. All right, so my calculations show the answer here is precisely, all right? So this is $30.40. So the exact amount here is $30.40. And so again, the question in our remaining part, the very last part of our current example here, we're asking for what is the meaning of the answer in D, the answer we have just now found. So now I purposely brought this up, but for any one of you who are already fluent with this concept, then you can already understand what that is. But so 30.4, let me swing on the other board right here. That answer we have just found in part D is the exact. So earlier $30.20 was only an approximate, but this is the exact, okay? The exact cost to produce the 9th item, okay? And so when you're saying the ninth item, of course, needless to mention, it's the 9th item after the 8th item, after selling 8 items away, okay? So to produce the 9th item is really $30.40. And again, so 2 examples back to back, and you can see that how we use derivative can always give us a close enough approximate. And that's the reason why when you're working with marginal revenue, marginal cost here, and even with marginal profits for years, for generations, business professionals give up doing this work because too much math, okay? Stick with the derivative method. Yes, it's only going to give some approximates, but close enough to the point that we're going to just stay with that. Okay, so that's the official method now to find marginal cost, even though it permanently remains as an approximate. But believe me on that, as later on as your function grows more complicated, the precision of those will actually become better actually. Okay, and that's the whole point of this example. I mean, of this video lecture here is to show how we can understand about the concept of derivative is being played. I mean, is playing a key role in finding marginal in working with marginal analysis. Okay.